Okay, thanks for coming. I'm Mounir, founder of ParaSwap, a decentralized exchange aggregator. Before we start, how many of you guys have used the DEX before, or a decentralized exchange? Okay, well, so you have some good adoption here. So what I want to talk about is what's happening beyond DEX aggregation and what's happening also behind the scenes on DEX aggregation. We started in layer 1 2 years ago, actually. In the first announcement of ParaSwap, the version we know right now happened also in London 2 years ago. It was on a conference. It looks like that. I think the screen is not really visible, but what you can see here is a large amount. It's multi-million dollars amount that's going to be splitted across multiple exchanges, happening in one transaction and using the properties of the blockchain that gives a user a guarantee that they're not going to receive something less than what is displayed minus a slippage tolerance, or the transaction is going to be reverted, like nothing is going to be spent, although the complexity of this transaction here, we may be using one exchange or maybe 10 or maybe 20 exchanges at the same time. But also we did something special that we saw other projects doing the same thing, is what we called OTC trading or on-chain OTC trading. And that's using professional market makers. They are feeding us with the stream of prices, and that's given an interesting properties to the users. And this can be users of this UI or users of the API, like a MetaMask or Ledger, for instance. And here, this number is guaranteed. Like, the rates are fixed as in OTC trading. And that's something very different to what you can see in a Uniswap, for instance, where there are front-running issues, there are MEV, there is slippage, and here there is literally zero slippage. The market makers will commit as if they were to commit on a normal OTC desk. But this is happening on-chain, so the settlement happens immediately, right after the trade, with the same properties as any trade happening on the blockchain. It works like this. So suppose a user will want to sell ETH for USDT. Behind the scenes, and that's happening on the API side, on the server side, where we are continuously sourcing prices from public exchanges or DEXs, and at the same time getting prices from professional market makers. It works more or less like a dark pool, pretty much, but it's all obviously visible and in public. And running some magic with some clever architecture and algorithms, optimization algorithms, to return an optimized price to the user with maybe one market maker, multiple market makers, or a combination of market makers plus decentralized exchanges. And what's interesting is that we use a multi-commit system where users have to commit, and commit for a user is a kind of a soft commit, where they just need to connect their wallets and push this call to our API, where we are able to check their balances and so on, like check if they can make this trade. But we ask for a hard commitment from market makers where they should guarantee us this price, and it will last for 2 minutes. So as long as this is filled within 2 minutes, the price is guaranteed, and that's an on-chain or like an EVM guarantee that we have. And then the users are free to put this transaction on-chain, of course. We have no control over that. We also, since early this year, we launched multiple chains. So aggregation became different. One lesson we have learned is with Ethereum, we were targeting only, I would say, DeFi or crypto native people, and that worked very well. We didn't even have to explain what is a DEX or as an aggregator. It was like this UI, straightforward, brutal, and people just get it and just use it. But once we launched Polygon, it was completely different. It became like a retail product where people are doing $1, $2, $3, $10 trades and paying almost zero, like virtually $0. And that was a big paradigm shift for us in our reasoning and the way we approach building the product. And we found it very interesting. And we see that, of course, with BSC and Avalanche. So I would say side chains or those scaling solutions shifted, I would say, the way we build aggregators. We don't build aggregators as before. But now I'm one of these guys that think that Polygon and BSC are not layer 2s. They are side chains. They are layer 1s with helping on scaling Ethereum. But the real layer 2s are layers in a literary point of view, where they are based on the security of Ethereum. Like hacking one of those is equally equivalent to hacking Ethereum itself. So here there are some similarities with Polygon and with other chains, because simply it's just cheap. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to do a trade on a Starkware, for instance, when they launched the Starknet. Very similar with zkSync and others. So I would say the paradigm shifts is very similar to the one we see in Ethereum, in sidechains, although we think they are much better because they rely on the security of Ethereum. Now, this is what I was talking about, is how we approach aggregation, how we approach product building and users. But now here we had one of the first non-trading use cases applied to an aggregator, which is interest rate swaps that we did with Aave, where anyone can go from an asset that's making one APY to another asset that's making another APY in one transaction using ParaSwap smart contracts and API. So that's one of the new use cases we did with Aave, and among others that are coming. So that's also a new perspective. Obviously, in DEX aggregation is not only I'm trading A to B, but I also can swap from one interest rate to another using ParaSwap. And the thing is, the benefit here is obviously it's happening in one swap, so it's a good UX. But also I'm maybe getting slightly more APY because I'm getting anyways more DAI with USDC if I get use an aggregator than if I use a Uniswap, for instance. And last thing I would like to talk about is how about institutions? That's the thing that we've been talking about in crypto since maybe 2016 or 17. We think that ParaSwap pool is a very good fit for institutions because it has everything that institutions want. Well, first of all, institutions today, they want to get into DeFi and have DeFi prices in tokens, and many of them, they just can't for regulatory issues. And the thing is, with ParaSwap pool, those are professional market makers that all of them are already KYC'd. Was one of the process. And institutions, they won't get in if the KYC process doesn't exist. So ParaSwap Pro API, the next iteration of aggregation protocol that we are building, will be enable these guys that are maybe not even in crypto, will be able to get into crypto. And if they're only in Bitcoin or Ethereum, in highly centralized exchanges, now they can use DeFi tech, as a pure tech, without really being in DeFi. So they have access to DeFi without being really in DeFi. And obviously, we hope, if they want at some point and at some day, to finally be connected to DeFi and connect to Balancer, Uniswap, CowSwap, and other I would say, public blockchains, that public DEXs that we think are the most efficient and are the future. Thank you very much.
So do you plan on doing cross-chain aggregation as well? Or layer 2 aggregation as well in a world where there's liquidity on Optimism, Arbitrum, etc., etc.?
It's definitely on the roadmap, but it's not going to be us who's going to do the cross-chain, because in a single chain, we can give this EVM guarantees, where at the end of the transaction, there are smart contract checks to see if the amount you're expecting correspond to the amount that is returned, which is something that cannot be done today, at least with the current tech, in a cross-chain environment. Because if you think about it, you do a swap on a single chain, then you do a transfer to the other chain, then you do the other swap or not. And if a revert happen on the other chain, there is no way to revert in a deterministic way. So you may be a market change in the price may result in you losing money and maybe losing a significant amount. So there is no way to do it. What we're doing right now is working with projects who are doing cross-chain. They are using ParaSwap in this context and using, for instance, derivatives in order to cover for this kind of scenario, so that if a rollback is happening, well, there is a cover with derivatives so that we have a certainty that you're getting back the initial amounts that you won't be spending. Why I can just... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this looks a lot like what you see in finance, in traditional finance, with the brokers doing this kind of hedging when doing this kind of trades. Yeah.